It's TK Friday, and today on The Joy of Editing, it's another full edit. So sit back, relax, and stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. It is TK Friday, and thank you all for joining me again today. It's another TK Friday. And today's image comes to us from Stephen Baggett. I'm calling this one Rugged Rockscape. This is a really cool image. And as always, I start out in Lightroom. And by the way, if you have an image you would like me to edit on a TK Friday, just go into the description of this video, scroll down and look for Contact Me. Contact me and we can discuss doing one of your images on a TK Friday. Also, in the description below this video, click on More to open up the description, and you can download the image as well as the PDF notes. I'll have Dropbox links there for you. So give this edit a try. It's a great way of learning how to use the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. By the way, if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, I'll have a link for it in the description below this video. Click on that link, and that'll take you over to the TK web store where you can purchase the TK9 plugin for Photoshop along with training videos. Now, if you use my promo code DK15, you'll save 15% off your entire purchase. I'll make a small commission, and when you do that, you're supporting The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and you're saving money. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm starting out here in Lightroom, and I am using a linear profile for Stephen's camera. And as you can see, I've done some basic adjustments here. I just like to keep the image pretty flat going into Photoshop, and I've also done a little bit of cropping on this image, as you can see. And then as far as detail, I have a little bit of sharpening, some masking, no noise reduction except some color noise reduction. And as far as lens corrections, I'm removing chromatic aberrations and enabling profile corrections. But other than that, that is basically it. And now at this point, I'm ready to take this image into Photoshop. So I just right click on the image, go to Edit In, and click on Edit in Photoshop 2024. But as always, I'm already there. And here we are inside of Photoshop, ready to get started. Now, with this image, I'm going to use another depth map in the balance and contrast process of this image. What you need to do is come up to the multi-mask panel and then hold your Command or Control key down and click on this button right here. It looks like a little target. Click that, and a depth map is created for the image. And what you need to do is save that as a channel, so click this button here. And now you can see there's that depth map down there. It's been saved out as a channel. We need a foreground and a background. So what we can do is click on depth map and drag it down over top of this plus. And now we have a copy of it. And now what I want you to do is come up to the combo or CX panel and then click this button right here to invert it. This will be your foreground, so double click it and just type in FG for foreground, and then come to this depth map and it will be your background. So double click it and type BG for background, and then click RGB so you can see your image back again. All we need to do now is save out one more channel, and that's a sky channel. So come up to the TK9 combo or CX panel and hold your Command or Control key down and click the sky selection button, and that saves it out as a channel. And I like to call this setting ourselves up for success, because now we have a background, foreground, and sky channel, which we will be using throughout this edit. Now, if you'll notice, we have a selection indicator telling us we have a sky selection. You can see the marching ants around the sky. We need to deselect that. Click this button on the combo or CX panel to deselect that selection. Now what I need is 3 color grading tool layers. So what we'll do is click on this color grading tool button on the multi-mask panel. That gives us 1 color grading tool. Click the plus, that'll give us a second tool. Click it one more time, that gives us 3 color grading tools. Now come back and make the first color grading tool layer active. And now we got to prepare these 3 color grading tool layers. So here's what we do. Hold your Command or Control key down. Click on the layer mask calculator. I love the layer mask calculator, as you know. Now, whenever you hold down the Command or Control key when you click on that layer mask calculator button, that will keep this layer mask calculator open until you click this X to close it. Now you'll notice the first color grading tool layer is selected. So what we're going to do is click the FG button, and then we'll click this button to apply it. You see right there? And now we'll make the next color grading tool active by clicking on it. This time we're going to click BG for background. And now we want to click this button to apply the background. You see that? But I want to drop out the sky. So here's what we can do. Click on sky, click minus, and you can see the sky is dropped out. If I click this double arrow button on my CX panel, we can see the sky's dropped out of this mask. Now if I click the double arrow again, we have the image back. Now we'll click on the top color grading layer to make it active. And this time I want to apply the sky. Now I already have the sky selected, so we'll click this button to apply it. And now we have our 3 layers prepared. And now I'll click on the first color grading tool layer to make it active, and we can start our balance and contrast adjustments. Now right now the layer mask calculator is hiding my combo panel, so I'm going to click the X to close the layer mask calculator. I don't need it right now. We can always open it up again if we need it. Now we're working on the foreground, so what I'll do is click on the Midtone button first, and I want to open up the Midtone, so I'm going to drag this slider to the right. Now when you drag the slider, nothing happens until you release the click, and then you can see the change. And I'm going to take it over to right here. And now I'd like to just warm it up a little bit, so I'm going to take my cursor. You see the tip of my cursor right here. If I click right here, I'm going to drop a puck. You see that right there? And then if I don't want that much of a color grade, I'm going to move this in and click right about here. And now let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after. But next we're going to work on the shadows. So I'll click on the shadow button, and I want to darken up those shadows. So I'm going to take the brightness slider and start to drag it to the left this time. You see how it's darkening up those shadows? And I'm going to take it over to right there, a -30. That really looks good. So now let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here is after. Now it's being controlled by this depth map, which is allowing the depth to be kept in this image, because things that are closer to us will have more contrast. Things that are further away will have less contrast. Now we'll click on the color grading layer above the foreground. This is the background, and it's a good idea to name these layers. If you name a color grading layer, make sure you have TK in parentheses in that layer, or else you're going to have issues working with the color grading tool if you have to come back and change it. Now, to rename a layer, all you need to do is, if you double click on the name, you see that we've highlighted the name. And what I'll do is just, on this layer, I'll type in FG for foreground, leaving the TK in. I'll double click this layer, and I will go ahead and type in BG for background, leaving the TK in. And for this layer, I will go ahead and highlight color grading and type in sky. And check it out. I screwed up here. I called the background BH. I'm going to double click this, and let me go ahead and make this a G for background. That's better. And now let's make the adjustment. I'm going to click on the Midtone button first. I'm not going to be as aggressive here because it is in the background, but I do want to lighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to take this slider and drag it to the right over to, let's say, right there, +19. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I want to color grade this too. So let me show you a little trick here. We're going to go back to the foreground layer and click on the Midtone button where I color graded. And what I'll do is double click this and do a Command or Control C to copy that number. And then what we'll do is make this background layer active again, click on the Midtone button and double click right here and do a Command V to paste that in, and click this button, and that'll apply that same color grade. And now if I shut this off, here's before and here's after. So that's color grading the background with the same color grade that was on the foreground. And now we're going to click on the shadow button, and I want to darken up the shadows, not quite as much because remember it's in the background. So I'm going to take this back to like a -19, I believe it is. Okay, so I have a +19 for the midtones and a -19 for the shadows. Who would have thought that would work out like that? But it did. And now let me shut off the background. Here is the before and here's the after. And now if we want to look at the overall before and after, we can click this button on our combo panel. Here's where we started and here's where we ended at this point. So I'm happy with the edit so far. But next we're going to click on the sky layer. And I just want to do a little adjustment here to the sky, not too much. I didn't intersect the sky with the midtones 3 to protect from clipping because I know I'm only going to be doing a really gentle adjustment here. So I'll click on the midtone button first, and I'm just going to slightly open up the midtones to like a +8, just like that. And now I just want a little bit of color grading to make that sky look a little on the blue side. So I'm just going to click right here and drop a puck. See that little bit of blue in there? And now I'm going to click on the highlight button, and I just want to open up the highlights on those clouds up there a little bit. So what I'll do is drag this brightness slider to the right, and I'll take it over to right there, +16. So let me shut this off. Just look at the sky. Here's before and here's after. And we're off to a good start. What's next? I'm glad you asked. If you notice that the color grade looks a little bit different right now, it does, because you know what? I'll show you a little behind the scenes. When I'm working on a TK Friday edit, I have my edit that I've done the previous day next to it. And when I compared the two, I noticed the color grade was a little off, and I liked the color grade on the original edit better. So I went ahead and copied the color grade from my notes and went ahead and, put it in here. I just copied it and pasted it here and clicked this button. And I did the same for the background. It's a slight little color grade difference, but I think it looks better. And now I am happy. And now it's time for some midtone contrast. But right now I'm on the second color grading layer. I'm going to click on the top color grading layer to make it active. And right now my color grading tool's in the way, so I'll click the X. Nothing changes on any of the color grading layers. And then what we're going to do is click on the luminosity mask button, and I'm going to use midtones, right, for midtone contrast. Here's midtones 1, a very subtle midtone. Here's midtones 2, a stronger midtone mask, but, it's still a midtones. And then here's midtones 3, the strongest of the midtones masks. And that's the one I'm going to use. I could use 2, but I'm going to use 3. You could use 1 would be too weak. 2 might work, but I'm using 3. And what I'll do is I'll put this to a curves adjustment layer and then come up to the presets. Right now it's on default, just a linear line right there. I'll click the drop down and click strong contrast, and now it is really strong, right? But what we'll do is take the opacity and I'll drag it back to like right there, 25. And now let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. See, just a beautiful little midtone contrast. And that looks really good. And now what is next? Well, as I study the image, I think now that I've added that midtone contrast, the image looks a little dark in the midtone. So here's what I can do. Come back to the multi-mask panel, click on the luminosity mask button, and this time I'll click midtones 1, the weakest of the midtone masks. And what I will do is I'll put this to another curves adjustment layer, but this time I'll leave it in the linear line right there. Actually, no adjustment whatsoever, but I'll click this button on my combo panel, or you could click it on the CX panel. It doesn't really matter. I'll click screen, and that will lighten up my midtones. And now I'm going to shut this off. Here's before and here's after. And let's see how far we've come. I'm going to hit the overall before and after button on my combo panel. Here's before and here's after, and I really like this so far. Now, when I study the image, I'd like to bring up the weaker colors a little bit, bring a little bit more saturation to weaker colors. And to do that, we can click this button for the saturation and vibrance mask. So we'll click it, and let's go through the different vibrance masks to find the one we like. And I'll start out with vibrance 1. Here's vibrance 2. Here's vibrance 3. And here is 4. Now, I generally use 4, but this time I'm going to use 3. It'll be a little stronger adjustment, and I'll output that to a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'll click this button right here, and now I can bring up the weak colors. So I'll drag this slider to the right, and I think I'll stop right here at +25. And now let me shut this off. Here is before and here's after, just a little bit of saturation in the weaker colors of this image. And now when I study the image, I'm looking back at the foliage back here, and there's some light areas back here. I just want to do a little bit of dodging, but this is something new. I've never done this, I don't believe, on a TK Friday. I'm going to dodge with color. What I'll do is click on my color mask button right here to generate a color mask. And I'm looking for a light tone in the foliage, like right here. I'll click this and click OK. And now you can see the area I've selected. Now what I want to do is narrow that range. So I'm going to take this top handle and drag it to the right to narrow that range. You see that? Something maybe right around there. And then I want to lighten that up. So I'm going to drag this slider over to somewhere right around here. I think that should be good. I'm going to output this to a dodge tool. Now the dodge tool has two sides. The left side's a 50% gray layer. The right side's a transparent pixel layer. They both work the same. There's reasons why you want to use one or the other, and I've gone over that in previous TK Friday videos. I'm not going to get into that today, so I'm going to click the right side of the dodge tool, and now you'll note that I have a selection. I will be dodging through a selection. Now you'll notice I have a white swatch because we're dodging with white paint, but I want to dodge with color. So come to the combo or CX panel and click on the little green brush. This opens up a color picker. And what I want to do is sample this color right here. But what I want to do is come straight up because remember, I want to dodge and that color tone sits there, but I want it to be lighter and have color. So I'm going to click up here and click OK. So now I have that bright color that I'll be dodging with. And now with a nice soft edge brush, right now my opacity for my brush is 50%. I'm going to type my 2 key to get down to 20%, and I'll just start looking for light areas and I'll paint over them like this. You see that? Now, if you lift your brush and paint again, you'll add a stronger effect. So just look for light areas and just, this adds a little bit of depth and dimension into the image, and I think it really looks good. So just look for light areas, and remember that selection is protecting you, okay? So we're painting through an actual selection, and some of these light areas, like over here in these rocks, see the greens over here? I'm going to lift my brush and paint over these a couple times just to bring these out a little bit, and I think that's going to look really nice. I'll get these guys up here too. But again, you got to take an artistic license here and figure out what you want. And I think that's pretty good. I'm going to get up in here a little bit, maybe a little bit there and there. Now let me go ahead and shut this layer off. So there is the before, and I'll turn the layer back on. Here is the after. But you see how those highlights are just lighter, and it really adds more interest to this image, and I really like it. Dodging and burning are something I like to do on all of my images. It's really where you can bring out the inner artist inside of you, which is very important. It puts your signature touch on your images. And now let's do some burning, mainly in the immediate foreground around us, okay? I'm going to stay away from this area back in here. So this time, we still have a selection, but when you click on this luminosity mask button, that selection gets deselected, okay? And now we're going to go through darks, because remember, we want to burn darks. So I'll click on darks 1. Here is darks 2. Here is darks 3. I think that's too narrow. I'm going to go with darks 2. That way I can get a little more artistic here. I can branch out over the light areas a little bit. Anything that's gray will get a little bit of the burning, and I'll output that to a burn tool. Now, again, the burn tool has two sides, a left side 50% gray, a right side will be your transparent pixel layer. I'm going to use the right side. Either side will work. I'm going to click on the right side. And now with a nice soft brush, right now my brush opacity is at 20%. And I tested out different brush opacities, but I decided on 50%. So I'll just type my 5 key. That'll get me 50%. And now we can start to burn. And now for some fun. Again, I'm just looking for little dark areas. And again, if you lift your brush and paint again, like I'm doing here, I lifted it a couple times. I'm going to come over here, and you could get some depth and dimension in these rocks here, which is really nice. And I'll just keep painting away, just again, looking for dark areas. See, here's some dark stuff down here. I'll go over this several times, down in here, over in here. But take your time. I'm making a video, so I'm going like really quick right here. So you see what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and finish it up and get right back to you and show you my end result. But you see exactly what I'm doing right here. So I'll pause and I'll be right back. And I'm back. Now this is pre-burning. And now let me turn this burn layer on. And here is after. What do you think? Again, here's before and here's after. And I like it. If you think it's too strong, just pull back on the layer opacity. But there you go, dodging and burning. And now as I study this image, I'm looking at these rocks, and these rocks to me are crying out for texture. Dave, give us some texture. And so, yes, I will give you texture, rocks. Now, to add texture, I can click on my TK Action button and click Clarity, and that's a great way of adding texture, but let me show you another way. Now, notice right now I have a selection. I got to get rid of this selection. It's very important. So click this button on the combo or CX panel and get rid of your selection. And then what I want you to do is Command or Control click this button right here. What it's going to do is stamp all your layers together and give you a smart object, because I'm going to click on the ACR button and go into Adobe Camera Raw filter, and we'll go into effects. If your effects aren't open, click right here on effects, it'll open. And what I want to do is add some texture. I love texture here. So I'm going to drag this to the right over to right there, plus 24. And along with texture, I want to add clarity, not as much clarity. So I'm going to drag this to the right to like right here, plus 21. And now a little dehaze. It brings out a little bit of contrast and saturation. Not too much. Plus 4 is all I want right there. And I'll click OK. Now remember, this is a smart object, so I can always come back here and change that later. But you'll notice I have tons of texture on this image, and you're saying, Dave, that doesn't look right. And I agree with you, but here's what I'm going to do. Remember, I have a depth map, and so what I'll do is click on my layer mask calculator, click foreground, because remember, I want to add more texture to the areas of the foreground. And I'll click this button to apply it right there. You see that? Now check this out. I'm going to shut this off. This is before and this is after. Now I looked at my notes and I actually had a stronger texture adjustment. Remember, this is a smart object. So I can double click on raw filter, camera raw filter that is, and actually I didn't have plus 24, I actually had plus 34. And as you can see, it's a stronger effect, right? Now I'll click OK. And you'll notice I still have my depth map. Now I'll shut this off. Here's before, and now here is after. And I think that looks much better. And now I'm happy. Now, we are almost done. At this point of the edit, I always like to try the color luminosity action found in the TK actions, but today I'm going to use the TK Magic Mixer. Now, I'm going to click the plus on the Magic Mixer, and the image goes to black and white. And I don't like this image in black and white. And what I'll do is click the luminosity checkbox, and now the image doesn't change. If I shut this layer off, here's before and here's after, it's the same image. But what I do here is I'm going to work with the luminosity of the image, the color luminosity. Now, if we look at the cyan red adjustment here, if I want my reds to go darker, I can take this slider and drag it to the left. You see that? If I want my greens to go lighter, I can take this slider, magenta green, and drag it to the right and make my greens a little bit lighter. Now, if you want to get the numbers that I have right in my notes, what you can do is come up to the channel mixer, because remember, the TK Magic Mixer controls Adobe's channel mixer, which is a really hard adjustment to wrap your head around. So what we can do here, just to get my same numbers from my notes, I'll click on the top field and I will type in the number -12. And then I'll type my tab key and go to green. And now I'll type in 113. And now I'll type tab again. And now I will enter -1. And that is my adjustment right there. So now let me shut this off. Here is before and here is after. Isn't that cool? Now remember, I did it all by working with the Magic Mixer. I didn't use the randomize button. I knew that if I wanted my reds darker, to slide the cyan red slider to the left. To make my greens lighter, drag my magenta green slider to the right. And the only reason I put these numbers in the Photoshop channel mixer, because I wanted to be consistent with my notes. And I really like this adjustment, by the way. And I want you to note that these numbers don't line up with these numbers, but if I switch off the Magic Mixer layer and come back on it, you'll notice now they line up. I love the Magic Mixer, and look at my YouTube channel. You'll find a bunch of Magic Mixer videos. It's great for black and white conversions as well as working with color, as you saw right here. Now, I'll have a link in the description below for the Magic Mixer. It's only $10, and I highly recommend it. So check it out. If you don't have it yet, why don't you pick it up? It's a really good value, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And next, I want to lighten up the overall image. To do that, I'm just going to click on this button on the multi-mask panel, which gives us an exposure adjustment layer. I'm just going to highlight this field by clicking on it, hold my shift key down, and click my up arrow one time. See how it gets a little lighter? I'm still holding shift a second time with the up arrow and one more time with the up arrow, and I think that's good, but I think my sky's getting a little too light. All I need to do is click on my trusty layer mask calculator, click on sky, click minus, and I've subtracted the sky. Let me shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, just a little bit lighter. Now, every image needs a vignette, I think, anyway. So I'm going to click on my vignette action on my TK actions. If your actions aren't open, click your TK action button. So I'll click vignette. And I always take the Gaussian blur the way it gives it to me here. I'll just click OK. And I'd like it a little stronger, so I'm going to come to the opacity and drag it up to like 50% right there, and it's a little on the dark side, but here's what I'll do. I'll click on the blend if button. You're probably wondering when I get to blend if, edit blend if that is, and I'll click on no darks 2, and now you see it gets a little lighter. So I'm going to shut this layer off. Here's before and here's after, but that vignette really helps out. And now there's one final thing I want to mention. If you feel this image is too saturated, I personally like it, but if you thought it was too oversaturated, what you can do is click the X on the edit blend if nothing changes here. Click on this button for saturation vibrance masks and use saturation 1, output it to a hue saturation adjustment layer. And then if you think it's too saturated, just drag the saturation back. It's only targeting the strongest color. See, you can pull it back. Whatever you like. I'm just going to double click this because I like it just the way it is, but it's all to personal taste. We're all different. And that is our edit. Now let me go ahead and come to the combo panel and go to the before after button, click it. We started out here and we end up here. And I'm really happy with the way this edit turned out. Well, there it is, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's TK Friday full edit. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe. Click that bell notification icon. Click all so that you'll receive all notifications. That way, every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time, but until then, happy editing.